Hey guys, this is Chad down here at Tempest Overland. We're working on the 98 Ranger truck again. I already got it up on the lift a little bit. We're going to be doing an add-a-leaf kit in the rear to level out the rear with the front. This front's actually a little bit higher right now. So what we're going to do is a ProComp 130-120 add-a-leaf kit. Your kit consists of two similar size short leaves. And you can see there it says 130-120. They're both identical. It doesn't matter if you flip them backwards, forwards. They're 100% universal. With that kit comes with new center pins for your leaf springs. You need these, very important. They used to only come with one size and they were too small always. They actually updated these kits from a couple of years ago. Comes with two different size center pins now. You're gonna wanna use the larger set of center pins. And the other thing you're gonna need is a set of new U-bolts. Don't try to reuse your old ones. They stretch when you tighten them. And if they're like mine and they're factory, they're rusty as hell. You're probably gonna have to cut out the old center pins. I'll show you a little video doing that if I have to. Hopefully I don't. Hopefully I can just use big Milwaukee 1/2-inch gun and snap them off. The easiest way to do it. Now your new U-bolts, they're gonna be 1/2-inch rod diameter. Now this is gonna vary. If you have a stock axle, they are going to be 3 inches in diameter of the bend. If you have done an Explorer axle, you need 3 1/4 inches. The axle tube is bigger from the 31 spline axle. Now the other measurement you need is going to be this way. From bend, center your bend down. Now these are only a 9-inch, not even, they're about 8 1/2. What you actually really should probably get is about a 10-inch. When I ordered these, I ordered 2 lengths. I ordered an 11 and I ordered an 8. I got a 9 and I got a 12. So these are probably going to be just long enough, but to be safe, go with a 10-inch. If you order them from a custom company, those are the dimensions you need. If you're picking them up off of a shelf, you kind of got to find what you can find. If you have a 12-inch, you're going to be fine. You're just going to have to cut, once this is tightened on like this, you will actually have to cut the tops of these off in order to actually get a socket down on there to tighten them the correct way. So my tools for doing this is, I do it on a lift. It's easier, it's safer. You can do this with jack stands. You put jack under the truck frame and then use an actual jack on the axle to bring it down and up as you need it. So that'll be a little bit safer. And then what I use for doing these C-clamps. This is a 4-inch. I tried to find a 5-inch and I couldn't. I either had a 4-inch or a 9-inch, so I went with the 4s. I've done this with 2 of these. It's way easier with 3 of them, and I'll show you where to clamp with 3 of these, but basically it's to pinch all your leaves together until you're done. That way you can tighten your center pin without stressing the center pin, or you'll strip the center pin out. You can't tighten your leaf pack together with a center pin. That's not what it's for. It's meant to just hold them once they're already pinched together. So we're gonna give that a whirl in the truck. The last one of these I did was just in an 02 a couple weeks ago for a customer, and it was about 2 1/4 in the rear of a lift kit with just this add-a-leaf kit. Now granted, his truck isn't as bad as mine. Mine are pretty flat. So we'll see. I'll show all those numbers, beforehand measurements and after measurements, so you guys have an idea. Let's get to it. So here, I'm just going to do this a little bit on this side. So I have an axle, or I have a C-clamp here and a C-clamp here. This is pinching the 2 main leaves together. You want to do this before you remove the center pin. That keeps these 2 locked together, lined up, and then your add-a-leaf goes between your overload and your bottom spring. Now you may have 2, you may have up to 4 individual leaves, whether you're doing this or not. And that's dependent on what package your truck came with, what a previous owner might have swapped in, the works. So this is where that 3rd C-clamp is going to come into handy, because you can do this with 2, and I have done it with 2, and you basically just you take one off, you pinch your actual add-a-leaf and your main leaves, and you slowly crimp them together, take the other side off, do that, and you just sit there and you work one side, one side, one side, one side to tighten them together. Now this is where a 3rd one is going to come in handy, because I'm actually going to grab the overload all the way through to the main leaves with one of these to try to speed this process up just a little bit versus using 2. So now you want to grab fairly close to your center pin. Now you don't got to worry about your axle because this is just to tighten your center pin. After you have your center pin tightened, then you'll actually go in, take your C-clamps off, and then put your U-bolts and stuff on. So we're going to do this real quick. So since I pinched that side, I'm actually going to steal it from this side now and loosen this one all the way up to go on the other side of the spring pack here. Okay, so I can't actually grab that yet. So I'm actually still going to have to move this in like this, unfortunately, because these other ones are smaller by a little bit. And so what you basically want to do is you'll see that kind of loosened up, tighten your center pin a little bit more. Now these don't come with a washer, but I highly recommend putting a washer on the top, just to help with, as you're actually tightening this nut on the center pin, you won't get a lot of bind up on that center pin. You're a lot less likely to strip it out if you're turning that washer or turning that nut against a washer versus the actual spring pack. So we're going to clamp that again there, and we're going to try this again, and I think now we'll actually be able to grab this with these two and tighten up the spring pack like this. Yep, there we go, slipped it on. So now you don't have to do this with a glove. I do because not enough of them that hurts my hand every time. I got this a little wrong though. You do this one on the back, that way as you're tightening into it, it leverages against the springs, so you're not physically fighting it, and you're literally just sitting here turning these back and forth, one and then the other. You'll notice as one starts to get kind of tight, start turning your other one will be loose, and you just kind of work them together. Periodically you just check that center pin, which I actually need to droop my axle a little bit more out of my way. Hammer's good to have there, just to tap your center pin up as you're going. Tighten that down a little bit. And you just want to keep making sure you're hand tightening the center pin as you go, so that you avoid binding. Now what I'm doing here is centering my pinholes back up. So you'll notice your center pin will kind of walk one way or the other. And so what that does is you just tap the end of your overload one way or another to move the bottom to line everything up for you. Go back to tightening your one side at a time. The other thing with this clamp being bigger is I'm kind of working one over top of the other, so I'm not really in the way of the other one as I'm doing this. Whereas when you're running the two of them side by side, it's slightly a pain when they're right next to each other. But you just sit here and work this back and forth, sneak a hand under here, and tap that center pin back up. Just make sure we snug it down again. We'll go back to tightening up our springs. Now obviously it's going to get a little harder as you get tighter together because you're forcing your two main leaves to actually go from flat to bowing down in to match that add leaf. That's where your lift comes from, is not necessarily adding a spring, although you do gain a 1/2 inch just by having the 1/2 inch thicker spring in there. But that's not where your lift comes from. Your lift comes from that short add leaf being a lot thicker and stiffer and actually re-arches your spring pack. So after I get this in there, once I get it tightened down to the axle, I'll actually show you both sides. This is the first side we're doing. So you can see the arch difference between with an add leaf and without the add leaf. Now, when you set it on the ground, it'll be drastically different. My spring arches were actually completely flat. Whereas now, they're actually going to sit up a little bit. Alright, so now that's all you have to do with that. Once this is up the rest of the way, I just have a little bit more to go, but I want to keep this video kind of short. I use a pair of ice grips to hold the bottom of the pin, not real hard, and then I just use a gear wrench to snug this up. Now you don't want to sit here and try to, wrench one way or the other, twist something off, but once these are pinched tight, you just want the center pin to be tight so it can't wobble around. And then you take your clamps off, bring your axle back up, make sure your center pin drops into your axle tube with the block. I have the block out of the way for clearance. It's easier to get the leaf spring started with that way. Throw your pad back on top, put your U-bolts in, tighten her down. Go to the other side. So we're gonna send you back to time lapse. So here we have one side done. Kind of want to show you. We're about 2 inches to the touching the leaf there. And at the back, you're about 3 inches to touching the inside of the leaf. A little over.
Now let's go take a look at the stock side, which, like I said, is very flat.
So you can see there, and that's barely 2 inches. And this side, you're barely 1.5 inches.
So there's a little noticeable difference just at arch, and I'll show you when I'm done now with both sides how much of a lift we achieved with this kit.
Alrighty, so I got the Add-A-Leaf kit done. Took some measurements beforehand, front and rear, just because I was curious because of the tilt of the truck being nose high, if it would change when I picked the rear up. And so I'm going to show you those measurements here in just a sec. I'm going to kind of walk you around the truck too, but not a bad install. I ended up having to cut both center pins out. I didn't film doing the second side. It was kind of redundant, basically all the same thing, and I want to keep this video short. So I'm going to flip you around and I'll show you those measurements.
All right, so measured in the front and the rear, go from
Center of the center cap straight up. And I measured basically when you're looking just like this. So you'd be measuring right to the bottom of the flare.
So with those measurements,
before I was 39.5 in the front, both sides, because I leveled them out with the torsion bars. And in the rear, you can see typical Ranger lean of almost 1 inch. So the rear was slightly lower. Now after, we went up 2 1/4 in the rear on the one side, and actually went up 3 1/4 on the passenger or the driver's side, which I'm sure that'll level out a little bit more as it settles again. But as you can see, the front went up 1 inch just from the angle of the Add-A-Leaf picking the front back up. So this might actually eliminate my rub in the rear. All right, well, there you go, fellas. So I'm hoping this will eliminate my rub, and it's not actually in the rear, it's in the rear of the front fender wells. It's actually right up and over here. And it's actually only on that side. It's not on the driver's side. So with that Add-A-Leaf bringing the angle of the truck up a little bit, I'm hoping that'll eliminate that rub. If not, still planning on probably cutting the fenders or going glass fenders. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.